Hearing Board, and at this time I would ask Board Member Hall to read the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we only have one matter of new business involving the property at 1800 Millersville Road, a Cellco partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless has applied for variances for the construction of a wireless communication facility at the property 1800 Millersville Road in Lancaster in the campus open space S zoning district.
I would now ask Board Member Lacurta to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Lacurta.
We do have minutes.
You have minutes from the prior meeting of the board. Has everybody had a chance to look at a draft of those? Does anybody have any changes or supplementations to those minutes? Hearing none, I would move that they become a part of the permanent record of the board.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So done. And we have no old business. So I would say then that it's time for the applicant to present.
Great. Thanks very much, folks. Good evening. My name is...
I guess we need you to be sworn, and anybody that's
Yeah.
going to testify in favor of your application.
Yeah, I'll get all of our witnesses to be sworn. Guys, if you want to be sworn, please.
If you'd each raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rich Williams. I am the attorney for Verizon Wireless. Verizon Wireless is here this evening requesting variances for the construction of a new communications facility on property owned by the Penn Manor School District. The property is located at 1800 Millersville Road, and Verizon is proposing a 125-foot monopole tower, which is the thin type cylindrical tower. It will have an overall height of 130 feet, factoring in the height of a 5-foot lightning rod. The property is located in the campus open space district. Wireless facilities like the one proposed by Verizon are not permitted in that district, so Verizon is requesting a variance for its use of the property. Secondly, there's a provision in the ordinance that requires 2 off-street parking spaces for Verizon Wireless, and as you'll see from the plans giving the location of this facility generally adjacent to a parking lot, Verizon Wireless is requesting a variance from that requirement. And finally, there are requirements in the ordinance with respect to landscaping and buffering. Verizon Wireless likewise is requesting a variance for those items. And I think from the plans, you'll be able to see exactly why Verizon is requesting that variance as well. We have 3 witnesses here tonight. I think we'll be better able to explain the application for the board. We have Mr. Frank Colarusso, who prepared the plans that were submitted to the township. We have Mr. Joe Ruiz, who's an expert in radio frequency design, and can explain a little bit why Verizon Wireless is requesting the location of a new tower in Lancaster Township. And finally, we have Mr. Todd Gannon, who is the site acquisition consultant for Verizon, who can explain a little bit about what process was involved in locating the site for the company. And with that, what I've done is to make it easier for the board, I placed all of our exhibits into a booklet. If there's no objection, I'll just hand that out to the board and we can follow along as we go through the presentation.
Prior to doing that, I guess we should establish the notices under the zoning code and posting of the property.
Yes, certainly. And I guess I can give an overview of party status or confirm that there's no one in the audience that is here from the public to make comment on this application.
I think that's pretty safe.
I just want to establish that for the record.
Thank you.
And so with respect to the exhibits, I'd like to, I believe the zoning officer should be sworn in
Yes,
as well.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good evening, Mr. Donnelly. Could you please state your name for the record?
John Donnelly.
And how are you employed?
I'm the zoning officer and building code official for Lancaster Township.
Okay. And did you receive a zoning application from the applicant on or around January 29th, 2025?
I did.
And if I show you what is marked Board Exhibit 1, Is this a copy of the application you received?
Yes,
And did you prepare a notice to notify the public at this hearing?
I did.
And did you cause that notice to be published in LMP, a local newspaper?
I did.
And if I show you what is marked Board's Exhibit 2, is this proof of that publication?
Yes, it is.
Was it published on March 10th and March 17th?
Yes.
Okay, and did you also post the property with notice of the hearing as required by the municipality's planning code?
I did. Because of the size of it, I posted actually 2 signs, one at each of the entrances to Common Field.
Okay, and if I show you what is marked Board Exhibit 3, is this a verification that you executed regarding the posting of the property?
Yes, it is.
And is that first page a written verification that you signed?
Yes, it is.
Does it note that you posted the property on March 14th?
It does.
And on the second page, is this the notice that you prepared that was posted on the property?
Yes, and attached to both signs.
Okay, and did you also mail a copy of the same notice to the applicant and adjacent property owners?
Yes.
And if I show you what is marked Board Exhibit 4, is this a list of everyone who received a notice regarding this application?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll place these exhibits onto the record to establish for the, that
Can I
the
see
township
that,
has
please?
met.
Before they're admitted to the record?
Mhm.
So they're saying that this section of the code
Yeah, but I got
is
it.
actually 1303.T in one version and .2 in the other.
Right.
Which I haven't seen.
I didn't like his notice.
Well, I think it was notice. The question is, does it give the right notice? I don't have any questions. We will admit those exhibits to the record.
Would you like the applicant to proceed?
I would say proceed.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. And as I mentioned, I do have all of our exhibits in a booklet, which I will hand out to the board. Makes it a little bit easier to go through, I think, the way we have it laid out.
Will you request admission as you go through the exhibits?
Oh, after the end of everyone's testimony, I will request, move for admission.
Thank you.
And with that, I call our first witness, who is Mr. Frank Colarusso, please.
If I may just interject, I think it would be best to request the amendment of the application just to formally establish on the record the updates to citations.
Certainly. Well, what I was going to do is introduce it as part of Mr. Colarusso's testimony, but Attorney White's question, I think, statement is very well applicable. I was advised that there are essentially 2 different ordinances online. One is the separate zoning ordinance for the township, and then there's the codified ordinance for the entire township. And the section references in the between the 2 are somewhat different. So the application that we prepared and has been admitted as Board Exhibit Number 1 contains a reference to the sections as they appear in the township's PDF zoning ordinance online. What I have done is I have modified the application and prepared an amended application to reflect the ordinance sections as they are specifically contained in the zoning ordinance in the township's codified code of ordinances. So with that, I would mark this as applicant's exhibit number 12 into the record, which would be the amended application. And I would request that the application be amended, or that the board recognize an amendment to the application as noted in applicant's exhibit 12 for the reference to the correct or codified section numbers, that being the only change within the original application as the one that's been marked as the applicant's exhibit 12.
The record will reflect that an amended application has been offered by the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Want to get sworn in?
Oh, you've been sworn already.
Yes.
Now, Frank, could you please state your name for the record, please?
It's Frank Colasurdo. You spell that C-O-L as in Lou, A-S as in Sam, U-R-D as in dog, O.
And your occupation, please.
I'm a licensed architect in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
And by whom are you employed?
Verizon, I'm self-employed, and I'm here on behalf of Verizon Wireless.
And your business address, please.
33 Woodport Road, I'm sorry, that's the old address, 350 Clark Drive, Mount Olive, New Jersey.
And do you have any experience in the preparation of plans for the construction of wireless communication facilities, such as the one being discussed with the board here this evening?
I do. For about the last 30 years, I've been responsible for designing wireless communication facilities, such as the one I'm going to present tonight, in several states, including Pennsylvania.
And are you familiar with the original zoning application that was submitted by Verizon Wireless on or about January 30th of 2025?
Can you explain that?
Yeah, are you familiar with the zoning application submitted by
Oh,
Verizon?
yes, I'm sorry.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification as applicant's exhibit 1 and ask if you could identify whether that's the zoning application package.
Yes.
And are you also familiar with the plans that were submitted by Verizon Wireless in conjunction with the application?
I am. I prepare the plans.
Okay.
Someone under my direction.
All right, I'm going to show you what we've marked for identification as applicant's exhibit number 2, and I ask if you can identify whether those are the plans that you prepared.
Yes, they are.
And do the plans that have been marked as applicant's exhibit number 2 adequately depict what's proposed for the facility?
They do.
And for the board's benefit, could you indicate where the site is located within Lancaster Township, please?
Sure. The address is 18 Millsboro Road, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. 1800.
And if you know, what is the zoning classification for the property, Frank?
That is Zone S, Campus/Open Space District.
And could you please describe for the board the conditions as they exist on the property today, please?
The property itself is a 39-acre parcel. It's developed with athletic ball fields, a concession stand in the middle. It's got over 1,457 linear feet on Millersville Road and a little more than 430 linear feet on Waybank Road. To the north of the property is a school.
Wabank. You're
Wabank.
saying it's Wabank.
To the north of the property is a school and some houses. To the south is a farm and a church, and to the west are more homes.
And Frank, how would you characterize the area where the property is located?
Residential.
And with reference to the plans, what we marked for identification as applicant exhibit 2, can you please explain for the board exactly what Verizon Wireless is proposing here this evening?
I'm going to go up to my easel.
Okay, and just for record purposes, you have an easel with plans on it here this evening, correct?
That's correct.
And are those plans on the easel also the plans that are set forth in applicant's exhibit number 2?
That is correct.
Okay.
So up on the easel, I'm turned to sheet Z3 of exhibit 2. To the top of the sheet is north.
Three of exhibit 2.
Right, that package is exhibit 2. So just to orientate the board, to the top of the page is north, the bottom south, left is west, and the right is east. Millersville Road, which I mentioned before, that has 1,457.53 linear feet of frontage, and then Waback Road is on the west side. Verizon Wireless is proposing a 40 by 50, what we call a wireless communications compound. So it's defined by a fence and gravel. That is located 420 feet from Waback Road and 582 feet from Millersville Road. If you're familiar with the property, you know that there's a parking area for buses. This is being located directly east, adjacent to that parking area. And just for quick reference, the closest property line is 420 feet to the compound, and the farthest property line is over 1,200 feet to the compound.
And what is the compound? From the compound, from what?
But it's going to be kind of hard to see on sheet Z3, so I want to slip to sheet Z4. So sheet Z4 has an overall enlarged plan of the 40 by 50 compound area that we're proposing, as well as a site elevation of what we're proposing. So we'll start on the left-hand side, the compound. You see I've got a dimension of 40 feet wide by 50 feet deep. That's from railroad tie to railroad tie. Then
Is north still up?
north is still up, yes, sir. Then you'll take a look at the fence. We're proposing an 8-foot high fence, a chain link fence that will surround and secure our equipment pad, a concrete pad that has 3 cabinets and a backup generator located on it, as well as our monopole. See on the top of that compound, we're proposing a 10-foot wide gravel access drive. And just above that note, you'll see existing parking lot. That's where all my technician will park when he has to come to visit the site. So once it's built and constructed, a tech would visit the site every 4 to 6 weeks to make sure everything is working properly and functioning properly. So, and he comes to
When
the
you say built and shrubbed in, what do you mean by that?
Say that again?
You said once it's built and shrubbed in, it will be,
Once it's built and constructed.
oh, constructed?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
I thought you said shrubbed.
The tech will visit once every 4 to 6 weeks in a Ford Explorer type of van, just to kick the tires, make sure that the facility looks well and is maintained. On the right-hand side is a site elevation. I'm just going to straighten this out. It's a little crooked. There you go. So as our attorney had I said previously that we're proposing a 125-foot tall monopole. A monopole is essentially a steel structure. They take a flat plate and the manufacturers put it in a press and they bend it. So it'll have multiple sides, anywhere from 12 to 18 breaks. It's also tapered. It's larger at the base. As it rises to the sky, it tapers down. This pole, given what I'm proposing antenna-wise, I want to anticipate the base being between 4 to 5 feet, tapering down to 30 inches at the top. At the top of the pole, we're proposing to support 12 panel antennas, and I'll show you on another sheet what that bracket looks like that gets attached to the top of the pole and how the antennas are supported. You see on the site elevation on the bottom, we have a slope from that parking lot, or I should say a slope from north to east in our compound. And that's going to help us get the water down and around here. There's a contour plan with the part of the set of site plans. We have a electrical demarc and a telephone demarc. That's all we need as far as utilities.
Sorry, say that again?
That's all we need is utilities, electrical and telephone, that's it. Sheet Z5, I have in the upper right-hand corner is an enlarged plan of that concrete slab we're proposing and how the 3 cabinets sit on that, as well as a generator. Below that is an elevation. We have a canopy over our equipment, just in case my tech has to go out there in bad weather. He's got some sort of protection. The canopy is 10 feet above the slab, 10 feet 8. The cabinets themselves, I'll have another sheet.
Is that basically the top of the equipment around 10 feet and then the canopy covers
No,
that? or-
the canopy is 10 feet high. The equipment itself, we can move to sheet Z6. There's some details of the cabinets themselves.
And that's on Z-
29 inches wide, 27 inches deep, and 74 inches tall. So those are the radio cabinets. It's like a small refrigerator, basically. Stainless steel, or steel, I should say, painted steel. They have locks on them, and they're actually alarmed, and I'll do that testimony a little bit about how everything operates. Okay, sheet Z7. In the upper right-hand corner, it's called the antenna plan. So if you were able to fly above this tower and look right down, you'll see how our antennas, how many antennas, and which direction they're pointing. We have 3 sets of antennas, alpha, beta, and gamma. So alpha is pointing 55 degrees up from true north. Beta is pointing 130 degrees from true north. And gamma is 340 degrees from true north. And my RF engineer will explain why it's set up that way. Adjacent to that antenna plan is an isometric of that mount I previously talked about, how it gets attached to the top of the monopole. And you see the 3 vertical pipes. That's how the antennas are attached to that, with brackets that come with the antennas. And also to the far left, there's a thing called a GPS unit. It's about the size of a smoke detector. I don't refer to it as an antenna. It's a receive-only device. We're proposing 2 of them. That helps this facility synchronize itself with the other Verizon facilities. So they know, here I am, this is where our call is coming and originating from. I have some details of the generator on sheet Z8. It's a 30 kW generator. Diesel's being proposed. This generator complies with all EPA standards. It has what we call a triple wall containment system. The fuel tank itself holds 203 gallons of fuel, but you only really fill it up to 198. It's a double line tank, so you have an inner tank and an outer tank. The fuel sits in the inner. The outer tank is for a protection. If anything ruptures on that inner tank, the outer tank will support not only fuel in there, but an additional 25% of capacity. The housing on this generator, so a generator is basically a car engine. This car engine is not below a hood. It's in a steel housing, sound attenuation, so it's insulated. But that housing itself also has a catch basin in it. So the generator, not only does it sit on a belly tank, the fuel tank, but it sits on it's a fluid catching basin. So even when my tech goes to refuel this generator, the nozzle from the truck has to go inside the cabinet, and he has to screw on the nozzle, then he can start fueling. So if any fuel accidentally spills, it's all contained in that enclosure. Noise. It's important to know that this generator has attenuation on its housing as well as its muffler. The manufacturers tell us that you can anticipate a noise level of 65 decibels at 23 feet away. Closest property line here is 260 feet away.
Where's that? Which part of your exhibit is that?
I'm sorry?
Which part of your exhibit is the property line?
Oh, right now I'm just testifying. Right now I'm just testifying about the generator and its noise.
Well, but Frank, the property lines are shown on sheet Z3.
Oh, yes.
It's sheet Z3 of Exhibit 2.
Closest property line would be the southern property line.
And did you say, I'm sorry, was it 65 decibels?
Yes.
Not 60 feet away?
At 23 feet.
At 23?
Correct. So just some quick math. Every time you double the distance between the source and the receiver, you lose 6 decibels. At 184 feet away, you're at 47 decibels. That's basically what you would experience if you were, someone turned a dishwasher on the room next to you in this room.
But, excuse me, but this is constant.
I'm sorry? It's not constant.
It's not?
No, so the generator itself is tested once a week for about 45 minutes. It's exercise just to make sure it works if we need it during a power outage. If there is a power outage for a day or 2 or a week, yes, the generator will run constant.
And it's not used other than for a power outage?
That's correct. The monopole in this particular area structurally will be designed for an ultimate wind speed of 113 miles an hour. To give you an idea of what that is, that would be equivalent to a Category 3 hurricane and an F2 tornado. I'm gonna just do some.
Yeah, Frank, why don't I ask you just some questions so we have, with your summary, just to hit on some points that you discussed with the board. Again, what is the height of the proposed tower with the attached lighting line?
That would be 125. 130 feet above grade level.
And what will the exterior of the proposed monopole look like?
It's a dull galvanized steel. If you ever seen the steel guardrails on the highway, I want 12 antennas at this height, 12 antennas at this height, 12 antennas at this height. I can also specify that I want a 10-foot or 20-foot extension, just in case a carrier comes in there and proves that he needs the extra height. It's already built into this pole and the foundation, but I would need to know that ahead of time.
And what would you need to know?
It's a safety net for the town. You know, if I can design this, it doesn't cost you anything, but I can have this built and designed to support an extra 10 or 20 feet, just in case the carrier comes in here and says, this is great, but I need 10 more feet. Otherwise, I'm gonna put another pole up.
What generally happens is Verizon constructs its towers to accommodate not only its antennas, but antennas for at least one other carrier. And there's a 10-foot separation. So since Verizon, its facilities will be at 125 feet, the next available center line for an AT&T or a T-Mobile would be one at 115 feet. What I think Frank is saying is if you wanted to add additional capacity, we could do that. We could say we'll make the tower strong enough structurally to accommodate antennas at 125, 115, and 105, or how many ever the board would find appropriate. But Verizon always designs it for itself and at least one other.
And you want us to tell you whether we want that? And the way you're applying
Yeah.
now, it's spec just for Verizon.
If there's it's spec for Verizon and one other carrier like an AT&T or a T-Mobile. But if you would prefer that it be spec for Verizon and 2 others or 3 others, that could be done. Verizon always does it for itself and 1 other, but we're always open to accommodate whatever the township has in terms of if they would want it to design to accommodate additional parties.
And that would simply mean the tower would be higher.
No, it would mean
No.
it would be structurally stronger. It would be the same height, but basically the steel would be thicker. It would structurally support greater weight, but it wouldn't be higher.
So generally, I mean, we have a center line of 125 for Verizon. I could tell the manufacturer I want 12 antennas at 125 Verizon, which we're only proposing 9. 10 feet below that would be at 115, all right, and then 10 feet below that is 105. Now that 105 is a little dicey, that's why I was saying, if you want, I could have the design for a 10-foot future extension. Not that it'll be built with that, but it'll have the capacity, just in case a carrier comes in and says, we can't use 105, but we can use 135, instead of putting another pole up someplace else. It doesn't cost the township anything, and you get to review everybody who comes in front of you.
Now, I'm sorry.
I don't see any specifications on the foundation.
The foundation is designed by the same people that designed the tower. They're structural engineers. What I would do, my part would be, I would hire I would get a soil scientist to do some soil borings. We would take soil samples, send those to a lab. Those results go along with my specifications to the tower manufacturer. They'll design the tower based on the area, the wind speed, the proximity of mountains within 1,000 to 5,000 feet, hill terrains, the type of structures within within that proximity. All that goes into this design.
And what's the specs for the concrete?
It's usually, I've seen as low as 4,000. Most of them are about 4,500, but our contractor, they'll just pour 5,000.
Okay.
One of the other things I will do is I will hire concrete inspectors. So when the foundation is poured, we measure all the rebar, make sure it matches the shop drawings that we get from the tower manufacturer. Measure the opening, the hole, the diameter, the depth. Then when the concrete comes, we monitor when each truck comes, how long it's spinning, when the pour starts, stops. We take slow tests,
Okay.
air, and we take cylinders. We do 7 and 28-day brake tests.
Okay.
And once I get those reports back, I can tell the contractor to stack the monopoles ready to go.
So until you do that, you don't have specifications for your foundation?
Not yet, because I haven't done the soil testing. But generally a caisson, you could range a caisson could be 7 to 8 foot in diameter. I've had them go as deep as as shallow as 14 feet down to 50. If it's bedrock is close to the surface, then we change to a mat slab. Anywhere from 20 by 20 to 25 by 25 square, 4 to 5 foot deep reinforced concrete block that's anchored into the bedrock.
Can I ask, you mentioned utilities, how are you accessing them, or what are you accessing?
Okay, so there's, let's go to sheet Z3. We're bringing in our own utilities, our own electric service, and our own telephone service. Off Wabank Road, am I saying that right? We identified an existing utility pole, and I believe our electrical consultant met with your local electric company, and you'll see how I have an E&T underground lines running from that utility pole over to our facility. So if you're asking
And
if
that's
the
Z3?
Yes.
Z3.
Yep.
So it'll be an underground service from the
Yes, sir.
overhead line to the facility?
Yes.
Now, Frank, will the tower have to be lighted at all, if you know? Like any type of FAA of obstruction
There's
lighting?
no lighting requirement.
How about in the 40 by 50 foot compound itself? Is there any lighting proposed?
There is a work light. We have a work light that's similar to a light that you have over your garage. It's on a photo and motion sensor, so if my tech needs to come there at night, the light goes on. When he leaves, it goes off.
And how will access to the facility be gained?
Through the existing roadways that are used by the park now.
And will the easement, or is the easement that's been granted to Verizon Wireless at least 20 feet wide, if you know?
Yes.
Okay. And will the access be improved to a width of at least 16 feet for its entire length?
Which width?
The access drive itself. Will the access be improved, or is it improved, as you mentioned, through the parking lots to a width of at least 16
No,
feet?
no. We're using the existing roadways to get to the parking spots that are just north of the compound. And then we have a proposed 10-foot wide gravel drive from the asphalt road down to the gates of our facility. That drive is there just in case we have to bring equipment in, take a cabinet out.
And is that the roadway you have an easement for?
For that gravel drive?
Yeah.
It's part of the lease, I don't
Yeah,
think.
it'll be part, we'll introduce the lease, it'll be part of. Now, Frank, if you know, the zoning ordinance requires that all access to the site be improved to a width of at least 16 feet. Can that gravel driveway that you just mentioned as depicted on sheet Z4 of applicant's exhibit 2 be improved to 16 feet to comply with the ordinance?
It can,
Yeah.
okay.
And will the proposed access drive that you're proposing and the compound itself be constructed to comply with any type of stormwater regulations or erosion and sedimentation control regulations?
I anticipate that it'll improve the stormwater runoff, because we're replacing grass with gravel, and we know that gravel captures rainwater and lets it perk into the soil slowly.
And would you anticipate the facility causing any traffic to the area?
No. So, with the facility statistics, it's a wireless telecommunications facility, so it's essentially designed to be unmanned, right? Doesn't require any potable water, won't produce any sewage or solid waste. Being unmanned, I don't want you to think it's not being monitored. This is watched 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through a series of silent alarms. My equipment heats up, we know about it. If we lose power, we know about it. The generator kicks on, we know about it.
Do you have a
We actually
camera?
control the generator remotely.
Do you have a camera that you?
No cameras.
Look through it?
No. So there's all a series of silent alarms. Anybody tries to break into our cabinet, we know about it. It all goes back to a monitoring station that Verizon has.
Excuse me, and where is that station?
In this area, I'm not sure.
And my question would be, how close is someone coming? You know, how soon are they getting to?
Generally a tech would be dispatched, they'd be here within an hour is what my clients tell me.
But to answer your question, there are two locations for Verizon in terms of an emergency situation. One would be the local switching center, which would be the switching center for Lancaster County, where I'm not sure exactly that's located. But secondly, it would also be sent to the Verizon National Operations Center as well. They would receive notice and then dispatch the appropriate personnel as well. So it would actually be sent to two different locations. But the closest would be, just as Frank had testified, the one that'd be about, have someone on site within about an hour.
Not being unmanned doesn't generate traffic except for that routine visit once every 4 to 6 weeks. Doesn't require potable water, requires a telephone line and electric service. Doesn't produce any glare, smoke or odor, vibrations. It's very benign use.
No, Frank, I know we also spoke briefly about the proposed generator and the 65 decibels. I'm going to show you a document that we marked for identification as applicant's exhibit 3, and I asked if you could identify what those are the essential noise specifications that you were referring to for the generator.
Yes. And you can see on the top sheet where it says the 30 REOZK and 100% load with the sound enclosure, 65.4 decibels.
And Frank, is Verizon proposing any off-street parking within the fence compound itself?
No.
And could you please explain to the board why Verizon has requested a variance for any type of off-street
Can I
parking?
ask before you get
Oh,
to
I'm
that?
sorry.
You mentioned that this noise matter is that the sound enclosure impacts it. What is the sound enclosure?
It's a steel cabinet, steel housing.
Okay, the actual,
And
it's
it
not
has-
like anything on the fence or anything
No,
like
it's
that.
steel and it has insulation on the inside, and a muffler has what we call a critical grade silencer, which you would see in a hospital type of a situation.
So Frank, my question was, can you explain to the board why Verizon's not proposing any off-street parking and why the company has requested a variance of that requirement?
Parking already exists. There's no reason to create any.
And by the terms of parking exists, how far is the parking from the proposed compound?
I'm 20 feet away. Between 20 and 30 feet away.
And I know you mentioned that the facility would be surrounded by the fence. How tall would the fence be?
8 feet high.
And it's surrounded by any barbed wire or anything of that nature?
No barbed wire, we're just proposing a chain link fence with some vinyl coating on it. And I tell the boards I like to use chain link because you don't have anything blocking you from seeing into that compound. It's more secure, in my opinion, than a wood fence or bushes around it. You want to be able to maintain that visual link between the outside and the inside.
And Frank, are there any other measures in effect which would prevent someone from, let's say, climbing the tower, for example, or climbing pegs removed or anything of that nature?
Well, the diameter, first of all, have something 4 to 5 feet at the base that you can't get your arms around. But they have climbing pegs that screw into the towers, the sides of the towers. The first 20 feet of those are removed. So you can't put your arms around it, there's nothing to grab to climb up.
And is Verizon proposing any landscaping for the proposed facility?
We are not.
And could you explain to the board why Verizon has requested a variance from the landscaping and buffering requirements?
Well, same reason I said for security, but I just don't think it's needed.
Okay.
It's in a park setting.
And is it adjacent to, I believe you said, bus parking and things of that nature?
Correct.
Okay. And finally, is there any type of business office, maintenance depot, or vehicle storage proposed by Verizon in conjunction with the operation of this facility?
No.
Thanks. Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Colasurdo.
Council, you have any questions?
So I believe regarding maintenance of the facility, you'd indicated that someone would be coming roughly every 4 to 6 weeks, was that right?
Every 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. And what type of...
That's the maintenance, the tech visits.
Okay. And then who else would be visiting and with what frequency?
Just the technician.
Just the technician?
Yeah, one man at a Ford Explorer type of visit. Unless they have to upgrade something or fix it, then there might be a crew on site.
Mm-hmm. And how long does that visit generally take?
About an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a routine maintenance visit. Goes in there, he signs a book, he was there, he kicked the tires, there's no loose wires, there's nothing rusting, nothing looks bad as far as appearance-wise.
And as far as the generator, remind me that's tested weekly?
Once a week,
Once a week?
yes, for
And
45
hopefully
minutes.
not 2 o'clock in the morning?
Usually between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m., so during the daytime.
Can you give
And
me
45 minutes?
Right.
Okay, you said that you would have that low noise.
Could you give me an example of the low noise? Is that the dishwasher?
Sure, at the closest property line. So
Yeah.
that would be 50 decibels in my calculations, less than 50. So that would be equivalent of someone in the next room starting a dishwasher, and you're hearing that in the next room.
Okay, and then where are the fields in relation? So when kids are playing on the fields and such?
Fields are, well, the closest ball field is to the north. I'd have to get my scale out to give you an accurate estimate.
Field.
Okay.
Kind of field.
All right.
Come down through here.
Yeah.
This is Pleasant Park.
And this is where they're,
Yeah.
so we're coming, and this is Wallback.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
Closest ball field is over 100 feet away.
Okay. I don't know if I have a question for him or for John. How do you want to do it?
I'm fine to listen to whatever you have to say.
John, the relief requested, the property is located in the township's campus open space zoning district. Communications facilities are not permitted in the campus open space zoning district. Why is that? What's the reasoning behind that they wouldn't be allowed?
I really can't answer the why they wrote the ordinance the way they did.
Pretty much the ordinance speaks for itself. It's what the people who passed the ordinance felt was appropriate in the circumstances. So this is a use variance, and they have the
Right.
burden of showing that
But you
putting
don't
the
have any
putting
knowledge.
the facility here makes sense.
Okay.
There's certain burdens of proof that they have, and it's just the way it works.
I guess with respect to the relief that you're requesting, it's incorporating some of the specific requirements for a communications tower. Do you agree that this is, at least under the definition of the ordinance, a communications tower?
Oh, it is. It is a communications tower under the ordinance. Yes, it's clear under the ordinance that this is in fact a communications tower. Yes.
And so you requested a variance because the communications towers are only allowed by special exception in this district when they are located on municipal property? Is that?
That's correct. And also, and I'll get into it a little bit later, there's a Pennsylvania law in terms of zoning is also somewhat restricted, in this case, by federal law. In 1996, Congress passed the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which basically precludes boards and townships from having the effect of prohibiting wireless service. And through the years, courts have gone back and forth to say, well, what does that mean, the prohibition of wireless service? And the most recent directive that was passed or found by the United States Circuit Court for the Third Circuit found that if basically an action by a township or a board materially inhibits the introduction of new service or in the improvement of new service, it can have the effect of prohibiting wireless service. So our next witness, Mr. Joe Ruiz, who can explain why Verizon Wireless precisely needs a site in this location, why that basically would, if Verizon did not have the opportunity to build a site here, why that would result in an inhibition of service and why that essentially would be a prohibition. So in addition to the variance criteria, it's something to be taken into consideration as well.
Very good.
Right.
Any other questions, counsel, for this witness?
Is there any plan for how this would be removed at any future date? I'm not sure if that's a you question.
Yeah, there's nothing in this particular ordinance, but what we usually do throughout the land development process is we enter into a removal or decommissioning agreement with the township such that Verizon agrees to remove the facility within such a period of time.
And if this were to be granted, would you agree to that as a condition?
Yeah, absolutely. What we generally do is, in addition to the removal agreement, also agree to post a tower removal bond. So that if in fact, let's say Verizon's out of business 20 years from now and the facility is still here, that bond is in effect to guarantee essentially the removal of the facility whenever it becomes obsolete or not operational anymore. So it would be both. We would agree not only to a removal agreement, but also the posting of a removal bond, tower removal bond.
Okay. Call your next witness.
Yeah, I call Mr. Joe Ruiz, please.
Yeah.
Oh, you have one
Yeah,
question?
John.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Real quick question.
Let me officer ask questions. My mistake.
If I understand your drawings correctly, there are no guide wires or anything like that to support the...
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
There you go.
Appreciate it.
Good evening.
Joe, could you please state your name for the record, please?
Sure. First name is Joe, last name is Ruiz, spelled R-U-I-Z.
And your occupation?
So I'm a radio engineer, and I do consulting work for Verizon.
Okay. And what's your business address, please?
It's 230 Overlook Road, Morgantown, PA, 19543.
Okay. And by whom are you employed?
RF Services.
Okay. And do you have any experience in the siting and design of wireless facilities, such as the one being proposed to the board here this evening?
Yes, I've been designing networks for the last 30 years across the US, Canada, and South America. I've probably designed over 15,000 sites or have managed engineers who've designed sites across those areas.
Okay. And have you ever testified on behalf of wireless carriers at hearings such as the one before the board here this evening?
Yes, I've actually been to this board before. It's been a while.
How unlucky for the board.
I'll be nice. I'll talk slowly.
And Joe, are you familiar with the application that's been submitted by Verizon Wireless here this evening?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And are you also familiar with the property?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell the board, is Verizon Wireless licensed by the FCC to provide service within Lancaster County?
Yes, they are.
All right, I'm going to show you, if you can look in the booklet, at what we've marked for identification as applicants Exhibit 4, if you could identify that, please.
Yeah, so this is a reference of one of our licenses. And Verizon, we maintain our own spectrum that the FCC has auctioned off to us, and that is specifically for Verizon. AT&T, they operate on their own spectrum, T-Mobile, their own spectrum. And as we get into our testimony a little bit later, we'll talk about interference. But we are specifically licensed in the bands that we are only using in this area.
And Joe, as a condition of the FCC licensure, is Verizon required to maintain any level of service within its licensed area?
Yes, we are.
And is Verizon Wireless experiencing a lack of reliable service within Lancaster Township as we sit here today?
Yes, it's a combination of coverage and capacity, which I'll get into in a later exhibit.
Okay. And in fact, has Verizon commissioned a radio frequency design report that essentially outlines the existing level of service within the township as we sit here today, as well as the proposed level of service if in fact this tower were to become operational?
Yes, we have.
And if you could look in the booklet at what we marked for identification as applicants Exhibit 5, if you can identify that, please.
Sure. Right at the top, you see the subject, radio frequency design analysis, and this is the report that you were referring to.
Okay. And I know that on the tripod you have some maps that you may be referring to in your testimony. Are they also contained within what's been marked as applicants Exhibit 5?
Yeah, you'll see those maps that I'll reference on page 3, page 4, and then page 6, and then page 7 as well.
Okay. So Joe, with respect to what's been marked as applicants Exhibit 5, can you explain to the board the current level of service that Verizon Wireless is experiencing within the township today?
Sure. So just as a reference, the proposed location is right in the middle of the map. True north is essentially straight up the map. If I was to give you just a general reference, we are just a little bit north here, just off the map where this building is. Also, you'll see on the map a couple of things that I'll mention. There's a scale on the bottom left. Also, you're going to see some other dots on the map, and those are the existing sites within both the township and just outside of the township. You're also going to see two colors on the map. One is in building and one is in car. So the in building, we have to have a little bit more dense signal to get through walls and building materials. And in car, you can see is a little bit further out than in building, just because you don't have to get through so much material in a car. It's just windows and metal. So that's why you see that the darker green area is smaller than the in car.
Okay. And Joe, just to stop you before you continue. So on the map titled existing coverage, there are certain dots. One's Millersville, one's LAN Alumni, one's Millersville University, one's Millersville Pike, one's Hamilton Park. Those are the existing Verizon facilities providing service to the township today?
That is correct.
And the one is marked LAN Gable Park, which is central to the exhibit as the proposed location of the facility.
That is correct.
Okay. And I know you touched upon the difference in colors.
The proposed location?
This one right here.
LAN Gable
Gable
Park.
Park?
Gable Park, yes.
And that's in the ball fields that we're talking about
Correct,
here?
yeah.
Little pen map?
That's correct.
And Joe, I know you spoke about the difference in the colors, the green being in building and the yellow being in car. Can you explain a little bit why it's important to have in building coverage versus just in car coverage?
Yeah, so as we've seen over the last several years, people are using phones, more than just at businesses or driving around. Most people, I know in my household, we don't even have a home phone anymore. Most people are just moving towards just having a wireless device. So driving in building coverage is becoming more important for us to be able to produce reliable coverage. And then the other piece of it is also emergency services and making sure that when people try to place a call, regardless of whether it's it's for pleasure or if it's an emergency service call from indoors, they're able to reach our network and get the service that they need.
Okay. And Joe, with respect to the existing coverage map, can you describe or explain for the board the location where there is basically a coverage issue within the township?
Yeah, so there's two things that we wanted to address with this site. One is coverage. You can see, here in the northwest, as you start moving northwest from the site, the coverage gets a little bit spotty. And so we're trying to address as much in that area as we possibly can. And also the other issue that we have is the Millersville University site. We have, you also have the high school that's right here. Actually, my niece goes to that. So between the college and the high school, we have a lot of capacity issues, which means that a lot of people are using their phone. And because what we talked about before, where we have a limited amount of frequencies, so we only have X amount of frequencies to use, and so each site can only handle a certain amount of subscribers. As that gets loaded up, we have to propose new sites to offload. So the site that we're proposing here is both coverage and capacity. And I will jump to, let's see, on page 6 of 10, there's a figure there, it's figure 3. So this is a similar map. It shows the same coverage, but you're going to see it has a bunch of different colors. And as Frank testified before, the way that these sites are designed is they have sectors and they all look in a different direction. What that does is that increases the capacity of a site. So you can think of a site, if you were to stand on top of a site, our antennas work like your eyes. What you see is what you cover. So you have antennas that are pointed at, in this instance we have 55, so those antennas will point and cover the folks and the subscribers in that area. And then all the way around the site. So at 130, and then I think the other one was 314. So what you see on this map are the different colors that are being propagated from the sites and then covering the area. And so when a site is relatively large and covers a lot of area, it usually will exhaust. The capacity will get reduced the more people that are in that area. So again, this site is to help offload the Millersville site and then add some additional coverage. You can see the other sites have multiple colors too, so that's the same thing. It's the antennas that are pointing in each of those directions that provide that coverage. And then again, for this particular location, we're trying to solve both the coverage and capacity issue.
So, Joe, with respect to capacity, what would a subscriber experience if a site were to be over capacity, such that would they experience a drop call, slow data session? What would occur?
So a combination of things. And if anyone has ever been in a traffic jam on like an interstate, and you look at your phone, you have 5 bars, but you go to hit send, call home and say, I'm going to be late, and you can't get a channel to make that call. So you have plenty of coverage, but you don't have enough resources at the site to be able to place that call or start a data session, or even an E911 call would also be limited in a situation like that. So you have plenty of bars, but you don't have the capacity to handle that call.
And Joe, for the board's benefit, is the area of capacity overload which the proposed Gable Park site is intending to mitigate, is that essentially the green area that's in the center of the exhibit?
That is correct.
Okay, and so in other words, the Millersville site, one of the sectors, so to speak, is basically providing service to that very large area.
That is correct.
Okay, and one of the purposes of the site is basically to offload that capacity so that people don't experience what you had just indicated.
That is correct.
Okay. So if in fact the site were to be activated from a coverage standpoint, what additional type of service would be afforded to the township coverage-wise?
So this map here, which I'll refer back, I think we'll have to go back a couple pages. I believe it's on
Page 4 of 10?
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes the colors on the board get a little washed out, but here you can see it a little bit better. So page 4 of 10, figure 2, is essentially all of the particulars for the site. The location, the elevation, the height of the antennas, the exact antennas that we're going to use. And what we do is we do a simulation based on all of those details, as well as the trees, the buildings in the area, and what the site will add to the area as far as providing that additional coverage. So if you were to flip back...
Is this in our booklet?
Yeah, page 4 of 10, figure 2, proposed coverage.
Tab, it's in tab 5.
Oh, I'm sorry, tab 5. Yeah, okay. Okay. So you can see we're adding some additional in-building coverage out in this direction. And what I'll do is I'm going to jump back to that sectorized version of the coverage map. And then I'll tell you what page it's on in the... And so it looks like it's page 7. So proposed best server coverage, figure 4. And so you can see what happens is that essentially northeast facing sector of Millersville gets reined in. So now all of those subscribers that were placing calls, whether it be at the high school or at the university, will now have a smaller umbrella of coverage from that site. And then the proposed site will be offloading and providing additional coverage and so additional in-building coverage as well as additional capacity. So now we could add additional channels to this site and be able to provide both that coverage and capacity.
And Joe, could you explain to the board why Verizon is proposing a 125-foot tower versus 100 feet, 80 feet, or even 180 feet? Why was that height chosen?
Okay, so there's a couple of different reasons. One, back to the whole frequency thing that I mentioned before. So there's like a balancing act that we have to do when we design a site. If we make it too tall, it would impact our other sites that are up the road because they reuse the same frequencies. We don't want to make it too short because then we'll be back in the township asking for additional coverage. So there's this balancing act that we want to propose a height that both provides the coverage and capacity we need, but also doesn't interfere with our own sites throughout the area. So there's a lot of back and forth. We have to look at the terrain in the area. So there's some rolling terrain in the area, especially on the backside. So, taking all of those things into consideration, we came up with the 120-foot height and not something lower or something taller than that.
Okay, now could anything be done to the existing Verizon facilities providing service to the area, like Millersville or LAN alumni or Millersville Pike, anything of that nature? Could you add additional antennas, equipment, radios to basically solve the coverage and capacity issues within the township?
No, and what we have done up to the point of making this the is exactly what you said. So up until this point, we've been adding channels, trying to figure out the best way to manage the RF from the sites that are in and around the area, because there's some RF control that we could do. So we wanted to make sure that we couldn't pull back coverage from the Millersville site because then we would have opened up a gap, because that would help with capacity but then cause a problem with coverage. So the whole time up to this proposal, we've been adding capacity in the sites in and around. Once we get to the point where there's nothing else we could do, then we propose adding a site, which is the most costly option, but we've exhausted everything else.
Now, in terms of that exhaustion, did Verizon Wireless consider any existing structures like towers, church steeples, utility poles, anything of that nature which would serve as an adequate platform for its antennas before proposing this facility?
Yeah, so that's the first thing we do. Todd's going to talk a little bit about that. And we've looked in and around the area. So first thing we look at is any tall structures, water tanks, buildings, other towers, other carriers that happen to be in the area. There is a fire station that's actually very close to the Lancaster alum site. It's just on Charlotte and George. It's right about here. There's a tower there that has 3 microwave dishes, a couple whip antennas. There's actually no other carriers on it, but it is too close to an existing site of ours, so it wouldn't make sense. And there was no other existing structures in and around the search area that we provided to Todd to go and look at to see where we can place the site.
Okay, and specifically, were there any existing structures within a half-mile radius of the proposed facility which would serve as an adequate platform?
No.
And Joe, what type of equipment is Verizon proposing to install on the tower itself?
So on the tower itself, there'll be panel antennas. You've probably seen them. They essentially are, they're about 95 inches tall. They range in width from 14 to 20 inches wide, and they'll be placed at the top of the pole, which was represented on the plans.
Okay, and would you anticipate the antennas causing any interference to the township or the police, fire, ambulance, radio, television, anything of that nature?
No, I do not.
And in fact, have Verizon prepared a interference analysis addressing the prospect for interference from the facility?
Yes.
And if you could look at what we've marked for identification as applicants Exhibit 6, if you can identify that, please.
Sure. So this exhibit with the subject interference analysis for proposed telecommunication facility. Under the summary of findings, you'll see some bolded text which says no potential exists for the manifestation of harmful interference. Essentially, we won't interfere with anyone. We operate in our own frequency band and we don't overlap with anyone else.
And Joe, could you tell the board if you know whether there are any federal health and safety regulations which talk about or regulate emissions from a proposed facility?
Yes, there are.
And has Verizon prepared a report analyzing the proposed emissions from this facility?
Yes, they have.
And if you could look in the booklet at what we've marked for identification as applicants Exhibit 7, if you can identify that, please.
Sure. This exhibit has the subject electromagnetic exposure analysis. So I'm just going to go down to the summary of findings. Again, you're going to see some bolded text, and I'll expand on it a little bit. But so it says, using upper limit assumptions for the Verizon Wireless equipment configuration, the cumulative radio frequency exposure levels would be less than 5.1% of the applicable FCC standard at all ground level locations of public access. Okay, so what does that mean? So we do an analysis of this particular site, just like we did here. We use the same height. We use the antennas that we would use. We use all of the radios that we could potentially put at this site, all turned on, maximum power. We also point the antennas down. We remove any obstructions as if it was what I like to call scorched earth. There would be nothing that would absorb any RF. So it's a super conservative analysis. And even with all of those details in this analysis, it's only 5.1% of the allowable limit. And the FCC says we can go all the way up to 100, so this is only 5. The reason why is that these are very low power, the equipment's very low power, and so is the transmit power.
Now, Joe, did Verizon also examine whether the proposed facility would have any impact on air navigation?
Yes.
And if you could look in the booklet at the document we marked as applicant's exhibit number 8, I ask if you could identify that.
Sure. Again, at the top, the subject is FAA notice criteria tool screening. I'll jump down to the summary of findings. You'll see some bolded text there. And it says lighting and/or marking of the facility will not be required. And it is not, the notice of proposed construction is not required.
Okay. And did Verizon also check with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation Bureau of Aviation to see whether the Commonwealth would have any objection to the proposed facility?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to show you a document which we'll mark as applicant's exhibit 13, and I ask if you can identify this one.
Sure. The subject of this one is PA Bureau of Aviation Screening. Summary of findings. You can see there, not bolded text, but it says it is not identified as an obstruction.
So in other words, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania did not have any objection to the proposed facility from an aviation standpoint.
That is correct.
Thank you. No further questions of Mr. Ruiz.
I don't have any questions for Mr. Lee.
I understand the document saying that the Pennsylvania Department of Aviation, Bureau of Aviation, does not require any kind of lighting or anything. Being that that's open field, potentially, I can't personally recall any specifics as far as aircraft landing or helicopters, but in the area we have had some helicopters for medical purposes typically landing in the area. Would it be beneficial wise, whatever, to have some sort of markings on that?
Well, I think we usually leave that. I mean, the one thing that we want to do is make sure that it doesn't need to be lit. Usually townships don't like things like that to be lit. I'm assuming that we would, if they make it a condition, we would.
The FAA would have to agree to it also.
The FAA would have to agree with it.
Yeah, so basically what happens is, so the FAA has determined this does not have to be lighted. If the township would like it to be lighted, we have to ask the FAA. And I haven't seen a situation where the FAA has said no. But once it's lighted, it must remain lighted. Unfortunately, there's no going back. And it's a white strobe during the day, and it's a solid red beacon. It's a dual lighting for the facility.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, I just have one more witness, Mr. Todd Gannon, please.
Thank you.
And it might be for you, it might be for the next witness. Obviously, you've explored other areas, other sites, I know that structures, but
A-N-N-O-N.
And your business address.
1777 Century Parkway, West, Bluebell, Pennsylvania, 19442.
And your occupation, please.
I am a site acquisition consultant for carriers, in this instance, in most instances, Verizon Wireless.
And are you familiar with the application that's been submitted by Verizon?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the property that's the subject of the site?
I am, yes.
Okay. And did you play any role in locating this particular site for Verizon?
Yes, I did.
And who owns the property that's the subject of the site?
Penn Manor School District.
And has the school district entered into a lease agreement with Verizon for the proposed facility?
Yeah, they did. Their board did there was a board decision. They had to take it to a board vote, and they approved it and signed the lease.
School district, whose board?
The school district's board.
Okay.
And Todd, I'm going to show you a document marked for identification as applicant's Exhibit 9, and I ask if you could identify that for me.
Yes, that's the executed lease with this Penn Manor School District.
And has the school district consented to the filing of this application with the board?
Yes, I believe we followed it, sent with them, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to show you what we've marked for identification as applicant's Exhibit 10, and ask if you can identify that for me.
That is the authorization.
Now, can you tell the board what's generally involved in locating a site for Verizon Wireless?
Generally, the radio frequency department of Verizon Wireless, the network people, they identify where they have problems in their network. They could range from where they have situations where they have no coverage or capacity issues, which I think Joe did a pretty good job of explaining, to who they have complaints, or they have failed 911 calls, or they have public safety. There might be police that use the Verizon network. A lot of different things go into how they come to and need what they call a search ring. When a search ring is released, it's given to somebody like me, a site acquisition consultant, who goes out into the area, and it's a pretty tight area, as you can see. Well, we took it down already, but as you saw, there was some existing assets, facilities nearby. So we have to kind of find a situation. Yeah, so, we had one here, up here, right? So we had the searching was actually down a little bit down in this area, more here. And we have to find a lease for them, if you will, or a place where they can put their equipment, their facility. Obviously, the low-hanging fruit, the path of least resistance would be an existing tower, right? There was no existing tower there, no existing water tank, no existing tall enough and flat enough rooftop, if you will. So that brings us down into the bucket of what we call a raw land, where we have to build our own infrastructure for Verizon, or Verizon has to build their own infrastructure. And then we start talking to public and/or private landlords that, just from the, obviously would fit the criteria where it's feasible. Obviously, we don't want to be too close to residential. We want to be too close to, there's no industrial park in this area. There's no purpose. So this was the highest and best, if you will. There's two dual school districts actually there. I think Lancaster School District's just across the road. Penn Manor's, so there's two bus depots in each. We talked to Lancaster's, and it's literally maybe 500-600 yards about their bus depot, putting a tower in there. They declined, and then Penn Manor said they're very interested, and that's how we got to having a lease here and brought us before you today.
Okay. And Todd, what factors were important in locating the site, either at Penn Manor or the Lancaster School District properties here?
Well, you want to have space for it. You want to have, obviously, be a use that you're not going to impact the existing use there. Obviously, being a ball fields or a park facility there, this being tucked away kind of on the edge of the bus depot there, it's not affecting the use of the field, it's not affecting the use of traffic there, it's not affecting the use of events, people going in and out or whatever may be doing. Sometimes there could be, there'll be a firehouse or something, but it doesn't work there because trucks don't have the turnaround. You're looking for something where you're not going to impact the existing use or future use. Yeah.
And is it a preference of Verizon to locate these facilities where there might be some public benefit rather than a private property?
Absolutely. They would rather, benefit the school district, benefit the firehouse, benefit the police station. Public-private kind of, it works out better than this.
And other than the Lancaster School District and Penn Manor, were any other properties?
Yes, we did. We looked at a few. If my memory serves, this actually started to happen during COVID, and so it dragged on for a little bit because of school board meetings and all. Their attention was not on a cell tower on the property. It was schools staying open and all that. So it goes back some time. But there was I forget the name of it. There's the camp park here. You come in here, there's where people come with their RV vehicles and they camp, and pretty big outfit, big company, national, yeah. And I talked to them for a little while about it, and they were actually during COVID, they were expanding so much because people were using RVs and whatever. They were like, they said no, thank you, and that got me up the street into Penn and Lancaster school districts.
And Todd, is Verizon willing to remove and decommission the facility as required by the township zoning ordinance?
Yes, they are, and it's also included in the Penn Manor lease, has to be removed.
And as I indicated, would Verizon also be willing to enter into a decommissioning agreement and also post a removal bond with the
If
township?
necessary, sure.
And finally, does Verizon maintain a national operations center that can be contacted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the event of an emergency?
Yeah, so as it was explained by Frank, it's constantly monitored. So if anything's ever going on, they know what's happening. They can also shut it down immediately if they needed to, or they could call police if it was like vandalism or. But besides that, there will be no other signage, but there will be a plaque on the gate, if you will, that identifies the tower as being owned by Verizon and the phone number. If anybody ever had a call for whatever reason.
And I'm also just going to show you what we marked for identification as applicants Exhibit 11, and just so you can confirm whether that's the National Operations Center number.
Yep, that's it. Sorry.
No further questions for Mr. Gannon. Thank you.
Council, any questions for this witness?
I was taking a look at the lease provisions with respect to access and to the right-of-way. It looks like there may be something called out in paragraph 5, page 2, regarding the easement in Exhibit B. I was having trouble tracking down. Are you able to locate that?
I
for
see
me?
paragraph 5. Are you talking about Exhibit B? Is it not?
Right. Just trying to understand where that's shown.
Oh, I see.
On the LEs are actually called out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think it's actually specifically called out because we're using existing roadways and parking areas, right? So there's no, generally if we were going across the field or, through the woods or whatever, we'd have to call that out specifically. We draw the lines for it, but in this case,
I can explain your question better. So you're right, paragraph 5 addresses access, and then Exhibit B. What happens is, this lease was just signed back in December, I believe. If you take a look at paragraph 1, grant, at the end of it, it says, the premises is approximately 2,000 square feet and is shown in detail in Exhibit B, part of Leslie may serve the premises.
Whoa, what?
As I'm firing this away, right? It says, Leslie may survey the premises. Upon completion, the survey shall replace Exhibit B in its entirety. So what happens is, Verizon attaches preliminary lease exhibits to the agreement. Once everything is completed, they then essentially attach a new Exhibit B, which substitutes for the preliminary sketches that have been attached to the lease.
it's kind of an as-built.
It comes with the as-built, yes. Yeah.
Can Verizon does Verizon attach to transmission electric towers?
They do occasionally. It is something they really try not to do. Generally, there's a lot of, if there is ever a problem, they have to shut down the grid to fix it, which is inconvenient to everybody that's service there. It is a long process to also do that. If there's a problem, they have to shut down. They have to also shut down the equipment and then notify everybody that they're going to shut down the grid unless it's an emergency situation. So it's something they frown upon because it's just it's inconvenient not only for for PICO in this instance, right, or PPL, yeah. It's also to the customers, They do, but very, very rarely.
There is a transmission line close by, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have any questions specific
One
to
quick
this.
question, I don't know who's it for, but should we be concerned for the safety of, say, the children in the fields and things like that say they climb over? Are there any open wires or things they could electrocute themselves on or anything?
And maybe Frank, if Frank address
Okay.
your question better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Frank, you've been sworn here this evening, you've testified. Did you hear the question regarding whether there are any unlocked or open facilities that might be a concern if a child were to climb the fence and get into the cut?
No, all the equipment is in a steel cabinet that's locked. So there's nothing.
It's an 8-foot fence and,
That's why I like the chain link fence. You can see those kids when they get in there and throw them out.
And just so I understand, that's primarily the rationale for requesting the variance with respect to the landscaping and screening requirements.
Well, it's also next to the bus depot, right? So kind of the natural aesthetics of it is just a plain chain link fence and then all the buses that are parked there, right? So there was that compiled with if there is a lot of activity there for game days or whatever's going on and kids are running around all over it, like Frank has reverted to, you can see where are they? Or they make sure they're not in there. So.
Do you have any other facilities that have barbed wire on top of the fence?
Yeah, we do.
You don't think it's required here with the kids being around, or?
If you wanted barbed wire, that wouldn't be an issue, yeah. We could do
Yeah,
that.
there's no issue.
There's no issue with barbed
Yeah.
wire, yeah.
Do you have an actual photograph of what this tower looks like? As opposed to all just the renderings?
Just the renderings. We could probably show you one.
Pull up one on our phone, yeah.
That'd be helpful.
That'd be helpful, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I probably got thousands. I mean, it's,
Now you won't be able to find it.
yeah, I got more pictures of cell towers on my phone than I do of my kids.
It's actually, I was looking at our kids play lacrosse over at Penn. I'm Smithfield, sorry.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. Yeah.
So, for lack of a better, because there's no other carriers on it, so if it was just Verizon, that would be kind of what it looks like, right?
Okay.
Todd, how tall is that tower? Just for
That's probably 120, 125.
So it's approximate to
Yeah,
what's
it's
proposed.
probably what you've
Right.
seen.
Yeah.
You've all
So
seen
that's
it,
about
sure.
like 10 stories.
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
Give or take, roughly, yeah.
Just so.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
And I would have nothing further. I would just ask for the introduction of our exhibits into the record, please.
And they would be admitted.
Thank you.
Did we have an applicant's exhibit 12?
Applicant's exhibit 12 is the application.
Amended
The
application.
amended application, yes.
Here.
Yeah, this one's torn between that and what I'm thinking. My inclination is to try to run the decision at the next meeting, and maybe have an opportunity for,
I think we want to flesh out a couple conditions.
yeah, that, and there's a couple of things that I want to talk to. So, our inclination is to try to have a decision on your application by our next meeting, which is next month.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything, I guess there were a couple things that we talked about, which we would look at most likely as conditions.
Removal.
One of them was
Yeah.
barbed wire,
Removal bond, the approval agreement.
that
right,
kind of thing.
Possibly lighting.
Yeah, the issue with the lighting, yeah.
We can explore that.
I mean, I think it's worth looking at. I don't know that it's the
Explore.
answer, but
Yeah.
maybe it's worth considering.
Sometimes what would happen is you may want to reach out to the fire chief or get their thoughts on it, what they think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think that would be a
I think
good
it
idea.
was more.
So, is that something that works with you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, that's not an issue whatsoever,
Okay,
yes.
so I would move then that we continue this to our April meeting. I'm not sure the date of that, it's April 22nd? I had it.
April 22nd.
April 25th,
22nd.
2025. April 22nd?
Yes,
April
correct.
22nd, 2025, at which time we will render a decision on the application.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Great, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you
Really
very much.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation.
Yes, well done.
Yeah, thank you again.